Welcome to Beyond the Black Letter Law by Prison Chambers, a platform where we demystify legal concepts for you. Today, we wrap up our General Counsel series, and we have the pleasure of sitting down with the head of legal of Accenture in Mauritius. I'm particularly excited to sit down with him today as we explore his role that covers several jurisdictions and a role that has spanned over a decade. Today, I sit down with Sayyad Boodhun. Sayyad, a very warm welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, Sayyad, I understand we were talking just before recording that you've been at Accenture for 10 years now. You've celebrated your decade there. You were in private practice for a few years before joining INHOUSE. Is there anything you miss about private practice?
There were a few things I miss. There were others that I don't. What I really miss, I think, is, wearing the gown. Because when I was studying to become a lawyer, and when doing the bar, etc., it's mostly to litigate. So when you get to wear the gown and go to court, this is a great achievement for you, and this is something that you have always looked forward to. So wearing the gown, going to court, and that thrill that you have in the morning before when you dress, go to court, and you have prepared your case, and you know exactly which questions to ask, where are your the tricky questions that you have prepared, and so definitely that is something that I miss. Even if I do go to court once in a while, but it's not the same thing. And what I don't miss, is the postponement of cases.
Yes.
The amount of time, I joke and I say lawyers spend more time waiting for their cases to be taken than actually doing the cases. That's definitely something that I don't miss. But having been in Accenture now for 10 years, it has been a good experience, even if I had never imagined to be a corporate lawyer.
Were you doing sort of civil, were you doing mainly litigation the 3 years that you were in private practice?
I was doing, litigation, mostly criminal cases at that time, and employment law cases as well, and a lot of, divorce family law cases, mostly coming from legal aid cases that you are assigned to. So, then a few civil cases, but the bigger chunk was definitely criminal law cases.
So I noticed from your CV that you still handle some litigation for Accenture. Is that you project manage, or do you actually appear for Accenture as their counsel?
Right, yes, it's still the case. We don't have a lot of litigation in Accenture, and primarily it's civil litigation. It was maybe a conscious choice that I made because I like wearing the gowns, sometimes going to court. And at the start, I was not sure if I could do that, and then I wrote to the Bar Council, and they said I could appear only for my employer. Sure. So I do appear, and the external counsel that we use, they indulge me a bit in allowing me to appear together with them, and sometimes it's on my own, but it's only to get a feel of going to court and not being stuck in the office all the time. Even if being in the office is not bad, but sometimes getting out of the Accenture world is something that is interesting. Yes,
because it must be such a different world being a corporate lawyer, going from criminal litigation to suddenly now being a corporate lawyer. Did the opportunity present itself in a way that you thought, why the hell not, I'll just go for it? Or did you want to become an in-house corporate lawyer?
Never had I imagined that I would be a corporate lawyer, in-house or anything. I had always thought I will be a litigator, maybe the whole of my life. Okay. So I have to thank my wife for it, in fact. After a few years, at litigation, she was, going through a website and said, there is this company called Accenture. Why don't you apply? There is this role called contract manager. Okay. And I was like, no, contract management, and I haven't been, that's not what I want to do. But then I applied, and during the first interview, the interviewer said, look, there is another role that we're looking for, as not specifically contract management, but as legal counsel for Accenture. Would you be interested for that, because your profile seems to fit more that? I said, yes, fine. So over a period of 2 months, I did 7 different interviews with 7 different people. And at the end of it, when they made me an offer, and I okay, it's real now, what do I want to do? And I said, okay, let me go for it. Let me just...
Were the interviews across, just in Mauritius or across Accenture for different countries?
I had 4 people travel from France because my role was to report into, still report into France. And they did interviews, individual interviews, and then 3 people here. And there was an 8th interview that was planned and it didn't happen. Luckily.
They were happy with you by then, after 7 times of meeting you. And has the role changed over the past, I would have thought the role's changed over the past decade.
You mean my role or the role?
I guess, has the role changed with the company changing, or has it remained constant in terms of your duties, your responsibilities?
The role has evolved because at the start, I think what they were looking for was a lawyer and someone that is coming in to give legal advice. Because generally speaking, a company which doesn't have an in-house counsel would be going to an outside counsel to ask for advice. But then I think what initially they expect is to bring that external counsel in-house and get that sort of advice. But when I joined, and I was telling you before, I was overwhelmed because you were trained to be a lawyer. You learn law and things that have, specific to law. But then when you join a company, I was overwhelmed by the corporate jargon. And not only that, but the Accenture jargon. So when I joined, I had to manage my team's budget, do recruitment. I was, capacity reports, staffing of people on projects and things like, and I was, people were telling me, we need a 0.5 FTE on X project. I was like, what is FTE? FTE is full-time employee. Okay. So the person has 8 hours per day, so 4 hours per day is on this project, and okay. So your chargeability is 80%. It should be 90%. What is chargeability? So okay, right. So for the first few weeks, I spent my time learning the jargon itself, and now I'm at ease with it. But that was very overwhelming at that time.
And how many people are in your team now? How many people do you look after?
When I joined, I had to look after the contract management team as well. So initially, I think we were like 10, 11 people. I grew the team over a few years to 40 something, and then I had to pass it on to someone else because the role itself of legal counsel took a lot of time. So right now I have 1, 2, 3 plus me. We are going to open another role. Only 1 lawyer, 1 qualified law practitioner, and 2 legal persons who are LLB holders. We will be probably looking for a 2nd law practitioner, more junior level, to support us.
And how do you train them on the job? Do you train them, or do you kind of just let them get on with it and learn on the job?
There were 2 types of training. One is what we call the Accenture training that everyone is given to get acquainted with Accenture and the business of Accenture. Secondly, you have sub part of it is an Accenture legal training that everyone gets. And of course, I'm there to train and take them through the journey, because I have been there. I know how overwhelming it might be, because you don't only need to know the law. You're expected to know so many things around. Then the last one that I had, she took a few weeks actually to be able to get over, to understand the jargon. And normally people expect you to know that already, but where we come from as lawyers, this is not something that we are and you don't learn that in books. There's no, whether you're doing criminal law or even company law, you wouldn't learn that in books. And I think that's the beauty of being in-house as well. But it's definitely a journey. I don't think that you can step into this role and be ready for it. And I guess a humbling experience as well. So you also look after, correct me if I'm wrong, you also look after Morocco and Tunisia. Yes.
How do you find that?
I was looking after the 4 North African countries that we had, that is Morocco, Tunisia, and then I had Egypt and Algeria as well. So I had to give away Egypt and Algeria. I was given that because both are French speaking, but there were certain, difficulties that I have been faced with especially with Morocco, because the law is different, and I need to rely always on outside counsel there. So, in all the different countries, first of all, the remote experience is very different because you're used to having, I've done my studies in Mauritius, I've done my LLB here, my bar here, so I understand Mauritian law. But then when you have to support another country, the remote experience itself is different. It's, at the start it was an issue for me. Secondly, having to rely exclusively on outside counsel there, whatever they say. You don't know what the law says on X, so you're always asking for what do I need to do and how this needs to be done. But not only generally, you need very precise advice from them as to, let's say we're doing an acquisition or we're doing a liquidation. We need a step plan. Every step, what is the step, what is the deadline, when does this need to be filed, who needs to be, to be involved, and things like that. It's really like you feel like a child learning. And
you rely on them completely, whatever they say goes.
Whatever they say. Whatever they say, because sometimes I say, I don't support the countries, I only manage outside counsel there.
Before the pandemic, did it involve any travel there, or do you limit your travel generally?
Generally speaking, if we have to travel, it will only be for board meetings, because we need to have a legal person on every entity's board. Generally speaking, we do that.
So you serve on boards as well for the group? I
serve on the boards of Mauritius, the Mauritian entities. I serve on the Moroccan entities, and now we've just acquired an entity in Vietnam as well, so I'll be appointed on that as well. But yeah, the travel will be mostly for that.
You've spoken about external counsel a few times, whether it's in Mauritius or abroad. Let's go back to Mauritius, because a lot of our audience are from Mauritius background. Some of them are existing lawyers, some of them are aspiring lawyers. What are the qualities you look for in external counsel, if you had to say the top 3 qualities?
First of all, Accenture, we work with what we call the panel firms. Firms, the global law firms that are already pre-selected by Accenture. There were a few of them, and whenever they are present in a specific country, we work with them.
Sure.
If they are not there, then the head of legal is allowed to kind of look outside, or if they don't have an area of expertise that we're looking for, they don't have it, then we look for others. But generally speaking, we will be working with reputable law firms or network of law firms, like you're part of a global network. What I look for specifically is we need people with an expertise that is, when we look for the advice, we look for something very precise. Generally speaking, if I'm going to external counsel, it's because I can't find the answer. Neither me nor my team, we can find the answer to it in-house. I normally ask, I'll be looking at it myself or having the team research it, and then if that is not possible, we look within the Accenture global network whether someone has done this previously or not, and then we will be going outside. So when we go outside, we're looking from the outside counsel that they don't give us or repeat what the law is saying. I can read the law. I'm coming to you because I want you to tell me what you think the law is about this particular topic, and tell me at the end of it what to do. Can I do it or not? What I hate, and I've told that to a few of my colleagues, is lawyers sitting on the fence. So not really giving you the advice and having a lot of disclaimers down, saying,
what's the point of
exactly.
seeing a lawyer then?
Yeah. But for me, getting a precise advice is very important. At the same time, I think an outside counsel needs to understand the context of the request, because most of the time, an outside counsel has lots of different clients, lots of different businesses in different sectors, and not all of them are the same. What I don't want is to take an advice for one specific client and then recycle it and then give it to me. It's not going to be the same thing for me as it had been for one of their other clients. So understanding the business of the client, I think, is really key for an external counsel. At least for me, understanding what we want to do specifically in that particular situation. Yeah, I don't have a top 3 as such, but those would be
the general qualities you look for. And it's interesting because you're the 5th guest that we have in that GC series, and all of them without fail have spoken about the importance of knowing the business. Do you feel lawyers in Mauritius have the business acumen, external lawyers have the business acumen that an in-house lawyer has and look for in them as well? Or do you think that is a skill that still requires a lot of honing?
I don't think they can, because I am the in-house lawyer for Accenture. I've learned the Accenture business over time, and I've got one specific business to look after, and I know it well. But for an external counsel, an outside lawyer, a law firm, they've got dozens, if not, clients in different sectors, and I think they try their best to learn, but it's really high level. They can't really go deep. Yes, that is something that is missing, at least for me, in certain circumstances. I've seen that that's not what I'm looking for. When I ask the questions or the legal opinion comes in, I'm reading it like, no, that's not what I want to hear. Then I have to go back and say, that's not what I wanted to ask you. This is specifically what I wanted. But sometimes when the advice is required urgently, and then there is this back and forth that happens, then this is an issue for me. But apart from that, I think it's difficult for law firms to, and if they could, then that would be great, but I think it's difficult.
Do you think, and I asked that question of Auna as well, who was our first guest, do you think secondments would be an interesting concept? It's very common in Europe to have law firms second some of their lawyers for a period of time, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, into a client. Do you think that would work?
We do that a lot in Accenture, not in Mauritius, but in the European countries, there were a lot of lawyers that are seconded for specific roles. I've seen in corporate investigations, I've seen in employment law, at least the groups that I work with. Why not? We would, I think, for Accenture, we would welcome that, so that it gives the lawyer a feel of what happens in-house and how the business operates. Yeah, sure, why not?
You wear several hats. So you mentioned that you serve on boards, you look after obviously the corporate function, do you also look after the compliance function as well, or company secretarial? How do you juggle all these different hats? Can it get overwhelming sometimes? Or you found a balance now?
No, it does sometimes get overwhelming. Well, it did sometimes, and it does maybe today as well. But I've learned over time to maybe strike the right balance. I have good support from my team as well, who I've trained. I've got 100% trust in them. I've learned to delegate to them as well. I've learned to accept that not everybody does it the way I would have done it. I've learned to accept that someone else might be saying the same thing or giving the same advice as I would, but in a different way. I don't need to go back and change it and put it in the exact wording that I would have done it. So I think with time, I've matured in the role and kind of learned what to focus on, what is really important. But you were right to say that it can be sometimes overwhelming to juggle between the different hats, because the advice that is requested from legal, it's about almost everything. Sometimes you have the answer, sometimes you don't, you need to research, sometimes you need to go to outside counsel. But what I found most interesting when I joined was, you would be walking in the office and someone would just stop you like, can I just ask you something? And you have to give advice on your feet. Like, I have this problem, can you just give me an advice? And okay, but it's not as I would have, the role is not as I would have imagined it, because when I was litigating, I always thought of in-house lawyers as people doing boring work, like sitting behind their screen and doing nothing apart from reviewing contracts. That's it. But the role is much more than that. I think now, you were talking about how the role evolved. I think nowadays, the role has evolved and the understanding of the role as well has evolved. Because when you are general counsel, director of legal, whatever way you want to call it, you are not only expected to be the lawyer, you are also expected to bring value. I mean, to bring something to the table that is not only your legal expertise. You are expected to create value for the business, for the clients, be really a thought leader. Yeah. And you are not only there as the lawyer, but you are the trusted advisor of the business, and they would come to you if they trust you. Because, previously lawyers, the legal function was mostly considered as the blocking factor. So sure. The people that say no. So now I've seen that evolution over the years that I have been in Accenture, where at the start, everybody thinks they know the law, in fact. And there was no need in the minds of people that you need to have a legal function internally. So nothing against finance people, but finance people will be drafting contracts.
I want to say exactly the same thing. She said exactly
the same. So they think they can read the law. HR people will tell you, I've read the law, it's English, I can understand. So then I would ask, do you understand collective agreements? Do you know there is a collective agreement? No. Do you understand the hierarchy between, the different laws? What is a regulation, remuneration order? No. So then with time, they learn to trust you, and then instead of doing it themselves, they would come to you for advice. I remember during the first weeks I had joined Accenture, very young at that time, and seeing things, I've heard you say that, very black and white, no gray areas. So I went to the CFO at that time, old guy, nice guy, old French guy, nearing his retirement. So I opened his office and I said, why did you do it in this way? And he said, we've always done it in that way. I said, as from now, you don't do it in this way. You wait for me to tell you how to do it. And luckily he said, yes. But when I was going out back and I said,
I shouldn't have said it that way.
Yeah, I think you're going to be fired. But then no, it went, he acknowledged that, he didn't understand what he was doing. He was doing it because they've always done it in this way. Yes. So it was difficult to bring the change in a lot of the processes, because this is a term that is used a lot of times, processes, to change them, to make them more legally compliant. Mm-hmm. There has been a lot of resistance to that, because people like to do it the easy way, and when you put in the legal gloss over it, like this needs to be done, but you need to do it.
There's resistance. Yeah.
There is, because but we've always done it in this way, and it's going to take a lot of time to do that. We don't want to do that. We don't have the people to do that. We don't have the bandwidth.
We have to get on with the business. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and what I've seen as well is a lot of times you feel there is a certain pressure put on you to make it happen in a certain way, and you need to be able to resist and say, look, no, that cannot be done in this way. Even if people are pushing you to give an advice in a certain direction, you need to be able to kind of stand firm.
After 10 years, do you feel that you've now found the right balance between pushing and pulling?
I think yes, because the leadership team around me are people that I have learned, I've grown with over the last 10 years, and there is this trust that's been built between everyone, the whole of the leadership team, and there is less of this pushing and pulling, as you call it, nowadays. Yes, they understand more the legal function, what the function is supposed to be doing, and how it helps them, because a lot of time our role is less visible. Let's say a delivery person, a salesperson has a certain target to achieve. It's easy to account for how much he achieved the target. You can measure. It's measurable, exactly. But for lawyers, how do you measure how much you've been able to, what I call, close all the doors to make it like, legally sound for the company, protect the reputation, limit the liability. You can't measure. And I think the only time we've been able to do that for legal was during negotiations, when you have a certain budget and you're able to save a certain amount in the budget. That's it.
You can show
it happens once in a blue moon. But now they do see us more as a facilitator, maybe, or as a protector of the business, the brand, the reputation, whatever.
And I think reputation is such an incredibly important component as well of being an in-house lawyer, because as you said, you're not just a lawyer, you have to also think of reputational risk. And I'm thinking about reputation in particular because you mentioned that there are 4,000 employees now in Accenture Mauritius. Presumably the employment component can be sometimes a bit stressful, dealing with people and situations that might arise from dealing with people, letting people go, people having people in. How do you find that to be one of the more stressful aspects of your role?
I would say it's one of the most interesting ones, because not with 4,000 people in Mauritius, we definitely have a lot of employment relations, employment law issues. But each case is different, and one of the components of my role is also what I have to look after ethics. So it englobes anti-corruption, but also ethics as to how people behave in the company, and a lot of training is done around that by the legal team on how people are expected to, behave in the standards that are expected. But the employment law aspect of it is a big chunk of what me and my team are required to do, because I don't say it's daily, but it's almost daily that we need to deal with not only disciplinary issues. It's about everything, a change in your contract of employment, a change in condition, or in anything, but it does take a lot of time. But like I say, it is the most interesting maybe, or the most dynamic part, because it's different every day. You don't know today, I don't know what's going to happen until the time I go home, or even after that. Sometimes it happens. Someone might do something, or something might happen because
and every case is different. I would have thought it's the variety in the type of issues that come up is great, because it keeps you engaged, and sometimes it might be stressful, but it keeps you on your toes.
It does.
It does. And I saw also on your CV that you've taught for a long time. I think you don't teach anymore. Was that a conscious decision? Did you like teaching?
I love teaching. In fact, when I was practicing, when you're practicing and you're litigating, you are in the court in the morning, and then you've got most of your afternoons free to conference, meet clients or whatever. Sure. But when you start as well as a young lawyer, you struggle to have cases every day.
To make
so
a name.
Yes, but lecturing was one of the ways that I found to get a bit more money in. But then I've lectured for almost 10 years. Even when I joined Accenture, I continued lecturing in the evenings, in Saturdays, Sundays, because I find, someone was asking me why do you do that? It's just because I find it challenging for me every time to have a different group of students and kind of take them from scratch to a certain level. I mostly do the introduction to Mauritian law, but then sometimes more complicated things like the law of trust or company law. But I find this challenging because every time it's a different cohort, different students with different levels of understanding of the law. So find that interesting to kind of be able to bring everyone to a certain level where they're able to go through the exams.
And do you miss that? Do you miss having given that up?
I do, but I don't have that much of time now. Yeah, it's difficult to find time to balance all of that with the family, the work, etc. Previously, when I joined Accenture, we were, I think, 800 people, or maybe less than that. Yes, but we've grown exponentially over the years, so the amount of work that comes our way now is definitely bigger than it was previously. So I do miss teaching, lecturing, but I don't have a choice right now to like go back.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, you have to, something has to give somewhere.
Yes.
Another hat I saw that you wear is you're the corporate citizenship lead for Mauritius. I was intrigued by that name because I don't know what it means. What does it mean?
Right, corporate citizenship in Accenture is what we would be calling in Mauritius CSR, corporate social responsibility. Okay. So Accenture, in every country where we are present, we really like to make an impact on the society, and volunteering is a big aspect of it. We like to say we don't only give money, but we also invest the time of our people and make and have them volunteer in the different projects that we support. So we work with different vulnerable groups, be it people with handicap, people with disabilities, women entrepreneurs. Now we focus on the new generation, that is children that are aged 8 to 18, because they are the next generation. But volunteering is something I'm passionate personally about. So over and above the legal role, that is something that I specifically had requested to be given. So yeah, so this is something completely personal, maybe the what we call the +1 that every leader has to have within Accenture, but it's nice to see how people in Accenture, I mean the young ones, how much they are engaged in volunteering, and how, you know, you ask them to do it at any time, they would do it, even, you know, over and above. Sometimes I've seen people, they need to do 2 hours of volunteering. Let's say we've got a project to deliver IT courses to women entrepreneurs. They would do their 2 hours of volunteering. They would go there by their own means in the specific NGO, then come back to the office and do 2 hours extra to be able to catch up for the 2 hours but no complaining at all. That's really, really, really amazing.
That's wonderful, and yes. It's interesting that you say that, because just before we spoke, I spoke with someone else and we were talking about the Generation Z, yes, as we like to call them these days, and how they want to be driven by purpose now. They don't want to be driven by money or profit. When I mean by they, I mean when they look at a company and want to join a company, they want to understand the purpose of that company, as opposed to how much money are you going to pay me. Obviously they still want to be paid, but it's really interesting to see how the mindset has changed even in the last 20 years, and I'm sure you've seen it as well.
You're right. This is also what we sell with Accenture. It's not only the brand, it's also the values that we have in Accenture. We like to say that the core values of Accenture are not there to be, you know, placed as an advertisement on the wall as well. We really want people to live the core values, be it like, you know, respect for the individual, be it stewardship, as, you know, the various values that we have, client value creation and whatnot. But you are absolutely right in saying the one generation after me, after us, is they are driven by other things. Money is not necessarily what they're looking for after a certain period of time. Maybe at junior levels, yes, for if 1,000 to 3,000 rupees, they would change and turn on the job. What I've seen is, yes, that they would not necessarily want to have a long career with one single company. They don't mind changing after 1 year, 2 years, job hopping, if I may call it, and even come back afterwards, but no problem in them, you know, doing that. And it's something that it's normal for them. I've had a lot of conversations with cousins, nephews, sometimes shocked by how they think, but I think it's the...
Yeah, and I think we have to evolve with them. I think it would be short-sighted of us to think that this is how we were trained, therefore this is how you must be trained. I think we're going to get left behind if we think like that. Last question, Sayyad. If you had to give one piece of advice to a young aspiring lawyer who wants to move in-house, what would it be?
I'll maybe use my own experience, my own journey, if I may call it. I think getting in-house straight away wouldn't be what I would have, you know, advised someone, because I think doing a little bit of litigation whatever, I mean, any sort of litigation, but at least experiencing that part of going to court and dealing with clients, with the police, and the whole of it is really important. That's what gives you maybe your character as a lawyer. And then after some time, getting in an in-house role, you can consider that, but not straight away. I wouldn't advise someone. I was given this advice by one of the senior counsels that I wanted to join his law firm, and when he told me that, I was like, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. I want to get paid.
Of course, you're a young, struggling barrister, yes. You have to hustle.
So he gave me that advice. I think it was the right advice to give to me at that time. And now this is what I'm saying, this is what I tell everyone. But also, in-house, getting in-house, there were various types of corporate lawyers. You've got lawyers that might be in private practice but only serving corporate clients, others joining law firms, or others being in the role that I have, like being the in-house counsel for a large corporate. But choose whichever one you want to do, but try to see which one suits you best, because this is something you will be doing for quite a long period of time. But what I've seen is once you get in-house, I don't think you can go back.
Yeah, I mean, I did that, but that wasn't really through, it was just a consequence of the circumstances. I was in-house in London and then I moved to Mauritius. And at the time, there was no other option than to go back into private practice. But I agree with you, I loved my time in-house. If never say never, but if I went back to London one day and I went back to that bank and they still had an opening, I think I would still go back there. I loved my time in-house. I think it's a different experience, and we keep on talking about the business. I think being in a business and part of a business is extremely fulfilling.
It is. But what I was saying is, when you go in-house, you can't go back to litigation. Not necessarily. A law firm maybe, but litigation, I don't think you can, because after some time you lose touch.
Yeah,
and
I think so. Yeah.
The reflexes that you had in court, not necessarily the same thing. I've seen that for myself in disciplinary committees and things, especially disciplinary committees, when I have colleagues against me. I'm slower than I used to be.
Okay, the quick-wittedness
yes.
that you require to answer back, and yeah. Sure. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
It was really, really nice catching up with you, and thank you again.